All right, we're going to look at flashes and setting it up with the camera. The flash is already set up. I could tell that by hitting this button. And it should pop the flash just like that. It sounds to me that I changed the batteries in the Pocket Wizard. Now I probably would want to change the batteries in the flash because that was a very, very slow response. That's okay. I can change them a little bit later. It's got a little bit more left to go. But the settings on the camera is the next thing that we have to address. I use the same settings always. 1/125th over f11 in manual mode. So you've already been through the series on basic introduction to camera and how to change features. So set it to 1/125th f11. And you're going to ask why. And so should you. In many years that I've been doing photography, I've gone to very many conventions and talked to many old birds, ran a studio, good stuff, but over time you'll develop a sense of awe over 1/125th over f11 because it has a nice balance of sharp photos and good lighting. So you don't want to go over f11 because what happens, it doesn't capture the full dynamic range of light. Going below it might capture too much light. We want a good midpoint. So remember, it goes all the way up to like f36. We don't want to go that high. We need a good midpoint, and that f11 is a good place to start. Now, we can drift between f11 and f8. That's the only thing that I change, is between f11 and f8. And I always try to stay at f11 if possible. When you're in a studio, it's the lighting that you have to adjust, not the camera. That was a flaw that I did a long time ago. I've learned over time, don't mess around with the camera settings. Mess around with the fact that you can turn up and down flashes and then go from there. So I have this all hooked up. I have it tethered. Again, you've been through the tethering aspect of things. And right now, if I went into Lightroom and took a shot, and that battery definitely needs to be changed. So there we go. That one fired off. You'll find this. And this is a good starting point. It's a really good starting point. Now the problem with it is I have a lot of shadow on the one side of the face, the right-hand side. So in the ideal situation, when using a beauty dish, you should get it above the client at like a 45-degree angle. So here's a more professional beauty dish. See it up there? And what happens is that goes down at a 45-degree angle onto her. Okay, well, this one is not at the angle, it's right to the side of her. And if I went to go placing it over here, it could get in the way of the camera. So if you're using a beauty dish, the smaller variation, you got to do some finagling. There's no doubt about it. What I like to do is, I could angle the client sometimes. That's one way to do it. So I always say, hey, look left or look right. You could do that. You could try to mount it up above if you wanted to, but don't get it in front of the camera so much. Now, what I'm going to do is readjust the composition here and take another shot. There we go. I had to take two to get the flash to fire. The head is crooked at one side. She didn't have her V8 today. So let me kind of fix her up. It's a big hot mess. There we go. Well, you can already see that the shadows are a little bit better. But the real secret is we're going to have to use more than one flash or a way of bouncing light. Okay? Now, when we go over the top here, you see these, like let's mouse over this little triangle. All the black is really dead pixels. There's no detail there. So that's when you say, well, F11 is great, but let's switch it to F8. And let's try to take another shot. Less. Much better. And you can see that there's a little bit more detail here. I like the shadow that's occurring here. It's not so much. And look how soft it is. Okay, now if it was not in the beauty dish, what would happen is this shadow would be very direct. And that's what we don't want. We don't want that direct shadow. So for right now, just know that our job is to get the shadow the softest possible, have it dissipate off, and not have that direct look, because the harshness of that shadow will make things look very bad when it comes, especially when photographing women. You don't want that. Sometimes the male face, you want it just because it gives that harsh, dramatic Arnold Schwarzenegger, high cheekbone thing, but you really don't want that with females. You want to dissipate it. And as far as these dead pixels are concerned, they're not so bad. And what we can do is do a little bit of fill light. And just a touch, and you can see they automatically go away. You don't want to get too harsh, but know that this is set to raw. So our job also is to take and massage these numbers out. We can do that because it's raw. So raw needs to be sharpened. Okay, it needs to be noise reduction just a little bit. Not too bad. Not to detail, very little noise. Good job. So now that we have our first shot, we're now have to go look at bouncing light and white balancing. So that's in the next video.